Hello everyone, and welcome to Mr. Simplified's tutorials. In this tutorial, we're going to look at Gestalt Psychology, the concept, the principles, and the applications of the same. Gestalt is a German word which most closely equates to patterns, forms, or a unified whole. In the simplest of ways, Gestalt Psychology is a school of thought that believes that the whole of an object is more important than its individual parts. As simple as that. Now, over the course of our lives, our minds tend to perceive objects as part of something larger and something more complex, and this is what Gestalt Psychology elaborates. Now, in reality, there is a lot of chaos and disorder in the world, as we all know, but human beings tend to search for order in disorder. And this is also what Gestalt Psychology focuses on. And it therefore helps us understand human perception and sensation. So, who came up with Gestalt Psychology? Gestalt Psychology was founded in Germany by Max Wertheimer and supported by Kurt Koffka and Wolfgang Kohler. Now, Wertheimer observed some lights switching on and off in a sequence in a railway station and realized that they're actually creating an illusion of movement. He called this the phi phenomena. This refers to our tendency of sensing movement where there is actually none, and this is what eventually gave birth to Gestalt Psychology. When you see sequential fairy lights, you get an illusion that light is moving from one corner to the other, right? It's however just lights sequentially turning on and off, and there is actually no real movement there. It's just our brain interpreting a sequence of lights turning on and off as a movement and making it look better and more satisfying than it actually is. A video game is a similar but more complex example. What you actually see on the screen is a complex arrangement of lights, which gives you a perception of people, objects, and motion. And in a similar way, when we play some strings on a guitar or some digits on a keyboard, let's say, in a sequence, our brain interprets what we listen to as music. Gestalt Psychology is applicable not just in the visual context, but also in the auditory context or any other context. In all contexts where there is a possibility of a pattern. There are some principles of Gestalt Psychology that govern how human brains work when it comes to interpreting movement and patterns. So let's look into some of them now, and after that look into the applications of Gestalt Psychology, including Gestalt Therapy. Okay, so the first principle is the principle of proximity. The principle of proximity states that when objects are placed close to one another, we perceive them to be related to one another and to be a part of the same group. Now, in the graphic, we see a group of 8 dots, and we see that they're grouped into 2 parts, and we see 2 groups. And we clearly see 2 groups even if the colors are mixed together. And this is the effect of proximity. Another example is letters coming together to form words. It's essentially the same alphabets used to produce so many different words, right? And it's the same alphabets that are being used. It's just that they're clubbed together to form different words. The next principle is the principle of similarity. Now, this principle states that we tend to group together objects which appear similar to one another. In the graphic below, for example, we have an S formation or a 5, clearly visible because the colors make the brain group the red balls together. Another example can be us grouping people together if they wear the same colored clothing to support the team of their choice in sport. The next principle is the principle of figure ground. Now, this principle states that people tend to instinctively put objects in the foreground or in the background. In certain situations, we tend to place prominent objects in the foreground, making them the figure, and place other objects in the background, making them the ground. So that's figure ground. Now, this can vary as per your perception. So what's figure for me can be ground for you and vice versa. Now, there are pretty complex visual examples available to explain this, but in the simplest of examples, let's see the following two block combinations. Many in the first image would see the small square to be the figure on a white background, and in the second image, many would see the black box to be the figure, to be a square donut-like shape, and perceive the white box as ground. Now, some could perceive things completely differently though, so this is all based on your own perception. Now, the next principle is the principle of continuity. This principle states that the human mind prefers to gauge continuous lines or curves rather than separate components that make up the line or the curve. In other words, if several objects are arranged in a line or a curve and some objects are not, the objects in the line or the curve formation are considered to be a unit. For example, in the below graphic, we have dots arranged such that we have a smooth line and a smooth curve. The dots on the half of the curve seem more related to the dots on the other half rather than the second half of the line. The same is true in the case of the line, and this is despite the color differences. Or, for example, if you have leaves covering your vision of the McDonald's logo somewhere, you will complete the logo in your own mind and not think of it as a half logo, because there is a pattern and you recognize that pattern. The next principle is the principle of closure. This principle refers to our preference to see complete and not partial elements. We once again look for a single pattern in our brain, in our mind, which is recognizable. Now, the McDonald's logo example can be used again, as it also works on our tendency to close the logo, as we saw previously. Or if you look at the IBM logo, for instance, it has been designed in a way that you actually need to complete the logo in your mind. It's deliberately designed in that way. The next principle is the principle of common fate. This principle states that when objects are seen to be in the same enclosure or are seen moving together in a certain direction, they can be seen as grouped together. They can be considered as in the same group. Army formations are a good example wherein people are perceived to be in the same group due to similar movements and formations. The next principle is the principle of symmetry. It's human nature to try and find order in chaos. Finding things in symmetry and harmony gives us solidity and order. If you look at the example below, you'll notice how powerful symmetry is. We have a couple of opens and closes of brackets. Our mind processes the space in the brackets as groups, despite the brackets being quite close to one another. So it kind of is more important than proximity. So it takes precedence over proximity. Now let's look at some of the main applications of Gestalt psychology. One of the most important applications of Gestalt psychology is Gestalt therapy. Gestalt therapy is essentially a humanistic, client-centered therapy with a focus on facing current challenges in life and taking responsibility of one's own life. Some of the key characteristics of Gestalt therapy are as follows. Focusing on the present. Now, focusing on the present challenges and not delving too much or too deeply into the past is one of the main hallmarks of Gestalt therapy. This is because spending too much time in the past or going too far into the future as well can both create anxiety in a client. A Gestalt therapist will therefore focus on bringing a client's attention back to the present by building rapport and being observant about the body language and basically focusing on the current challenges in that client's life. The next characteristic is therapist perception. Since Gestalt psychology helps us understand human perception, a Gestalt therapist would understand that his or her own experience in life and judgment can actually influence therapy. They would therefore look into not imposing their own judgment in the session and keep the therapy client focused. Self-awareness. Self-awareness is an important part of a Gestalt therapy. Guided imagery, role play, and activities could be used to open with and make a client aware of his or her abilities and strengths. Gestalt therapy is one of the main applications of Gestalt psychology and can be used in treating anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and relationship problems as well. What are some of the other applications? There are various applications in user interface design and product design as well. Now, Gestalt psychology can actually be used in UI design to strengthen user experience. For example, in designing better quality websites which engage and educate users at the same time. The principles we looked at can each be used from a user interface perspective to optimize client engagement. For instance, the principle of similarity can be used to ensure that similar content blocks on a website and calls to action in a website are placed in a similar color scheme. Another good example of good user interface design would be to use symmetry to ensure that web pages are symmetric to one another so that the information displayed is considered orderly and pleasant to the human brain while serving the intended purpose. Because if a person is unhappy or dissatisfied by the layout scene of the imagery and the text on the screen, that person is likely to click away from the website or out of the website or just close it down. Gestalt psychology can also similarly be used in product design and development. So you can develop better quality products and designs by using Gestalt psychology. It is therefore extremely important, not just from a therapy point of view, not just from an understanding of a human brain or a mind perspective. It's also very important in design, in bridging that gap between user interface and user experience design and the actual needs of a business. Okay, I hope this tutorial was helpful for you in terms of understanding Gestalt psychology and Gestalt therapy. I thank you all very much for your attendance as always, and as always, please use the comment section to recommend topics you want covered in this channel. Please use the subscribe button and the like buttons. Spread the word about this channel, share this content, and as always, and most importantly, take very good care of yourself. Thank you. Bye-bye.